The Los Angeles Sparks are 2-5, 2.5 weeks into the 2024 season, and the next Los Angeles Sparks beat writer, Cameron Ruby, is here to chat all about the team, including the Sparks season so far, how the rookies have fared, what to watch for as the season continues, and more. Locked On Women's Basketball starts now.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and happy Friday. You are locked on to women's basketball. I'm Natalie Heavren, and I'm a features writer and the Atlantic 10 beat reporter for The Next. Thanks for making Locked On Women's Basketball your first listen every day. And remember, Locked On Women's Basketball is free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use code, all lowercase, LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. If this is your first time listening to Locked On Women's Basketball, welcome. We at The Next have over 100 reported pieces every single month, including 198 in March, more than 100 in April. We have a beat reporter on every single WNBA team, one on more than 15 different NCAA beats, so get that YouTube subscription up. And you can also support us by subscribing to The Next, $9 a month, $72 a year at thenexthoops.com. Joining me today is Cameron Ruby, who covers the Los Angeles Sparks at The Next. So, Cameron, welcome. I think this is not your first time on Locked On, but I think this is your first time now as the official Los Angeles Sparks beat reporter. If I remember correctly, you joined us last year, just took over as the Sparks beat writer. To introduce yourself to our listeners, what were your first basketball memories, either playing or watching basketball?
So it's not a memory, but I don't remember it at all. But my parents have had season tickets since for almost 35 years to Stanford Women. So I grew up in the Bay Area. I watched so much basketball as a kid. Was fortunate to be in a family that cared about basketball a lot. So there were a lot of clinics, camps, teams. So first basketball memory, probably playing at like the YMCA and, the little co-ed leagues. It's the source of a lot of my friendships. I played all the way through D3 in college and still credit it for a lot of my favorite people. So, yeah.
And then how did you start covering basketball and your journey to joining us at The Next?
Yeah, so I've always been a writer. I do PR for tech companies, and I always have really enjoyed writing. I also wanted to create and find a community of women's basketball super fans. So in the 2022-2023 season, I made a basketball Twitter account, ended up connecting with a lot of folks at The Next who appreciated kind of talking deep into the season with me, and ended up reaching out to Howard and found myself lucky enough to be here writing the occasional LA feature and some breaking news when possible, until a few weeks ago when I became the Sparks beat writer.
Yes, it's been so much fun having you and so excited to read your stuff as the official Sparks beat writer. But before we get into the season as a whole, was there anything that stood out to you from the team's loss last night to the Chicago Sky?
Yeah, I think the main things were like rhythm and pace. I think the Sky can't really be underestimated. They're fast, they're scrappy, they're gritty, they're really well coached, especially on defense, and they have this like winning mentality that I think is fun to watch. Obviously not the outcome that I or the Sparks wanted, but I think there were plenty of times where it felt like the Sparks just couldn't get in rhythm against kind of that like intensity of their defense. And I think it's a game of runs. They had some hopeful moments too, but main thing I'd probably take away is like getting on the glass and getting out in transition. I think the Sky had a lot of steals last night, and they looked a little bit outmatched in terms of aggressiveness. So,
and then taking a step back, now the Sparks have started the season 2-5. Crazy that they've played 7 games already in 2.5 weeks. But how has the team gotten to this point?
Yeah, I think they're really young. The good thing about having a young team is that your ceiling is really high. I think they're the only team starting 2 rookies right now, with Rickea Jackson recently entering the starting lineup for them. So I think they're still finding identity a little bit. The average WNBA tenure on the team is 4 years, which could be, that's really low. I think, and then you've got players like Steph Talbot coming off knee surgeries last year, and Rickea Hamby's doing an amazing job kind of like being the veteran leadership on and off the court, it sounds like. But I think the amazing thing about the WNBA this year that maybe hasn't always been true is that I think most teams can beat most teams on any given night. And it's just going to be a really challenging road for every single team with kind of like the ebbs and flows.
And then you touched on this a little bit, but is there any reason for fans to be optimistic as the season continues?
Yeah, I think so. I think Brink is leading the entire league in blocks right now, and it feels like she's been here for 5 minutes. Rickea Hamby's having like her best start ever and averaging, I think she's playing like 37 minutes a game right now. Like her motor is just unbelievable. And that's something that I think is kind of invaluable from a leader, somebody that can be on the court the whole game. They're out rebounding their opponents by 4 rebounds a game. The energy of the team is fun. And then they're getting contributions from a lot of people. And I think that as a team that's kind of like gaining a little more fandom, a little more attention, maybe than last year, specifically in LA, just in terms of attendance, it's fun to be able to see them getting contributions from all different folks at all different positions.
And then, looking ahead, what do you think some keys for the Sparks are? Or where do they need to improve to get some more wins in the win column?
I think rhythm. I think it looks like they're still finding their identity, but I think like a really tactical one is just turnovers. I think they're turning the ball over 18 times a game right now. Their opponents are only turning it over 13 times. Like that's just not sustainable if you want to win games. And it's something that Coach Miller has talked a lot about. In his conversations with media pre and post game. It's just taking care of the ball.
And, how much of that do you think will, those turnovers go down once or as the rookies and some of the younger members of the team continue to get more experience?
Hopefully a lot. I think it's a combo, though. I think it's not, we can't attribute all the turnovers to the rookies, although that is definitely happening. I think in general, like the point guard spot is something that needs to be figured out right now, in particular for the Sparks. Lasia Clarendon is out with a concussion. Lexi Brown has been filling in a little bit. And more recently, Ari McDonald has had a few really good games, but I think, and they're not the ones necessarily turning the ball over, but when you have that much kind of adjustment that you have to make at the point guard spot, it really throws off the rhythm of your offense. And people are having to play different positions through rotations or just take on a little bit different roles. And I think that can be an adjustment that can result in kind of, missed opportunities, missed cuts. Last night, there were a few times Rickea cut to the basket and, people saw her a little too late, just little things like that happen when people are having to make major adjustments in terms of positioning.
And you mentioned some injuries. The Sparks that were only 2.5 weeks into the season are mentioned quite a few times in the next injury tracker. How have injuries impacted the team so far this season?
Yeah, I think Lasia is a big one that I just mentioned. They started the season with a triple-double like that. That's awesome. And that really sets the tone as sort of like the veteran leadership on the team. And I think that Lasia is kind of a calming force on the court, at least from an outside perspective. And I think the team is really vocal about what kind of leadership Lay provides. But, I'm really excited to see Azurá Stevens come back too. The pure length of combining like Azurá Stevens, Rickea Jackson, and Cam Brink is kind of insane when you think about like wingspan and size. We don't know the timeline for her, but I'm excited for that. I think also, Steph Talbot thinking a little bit about like recovery, coming back from injury, and kind of integrating back into the rhythm of playing in a league that's this quick and this fast pace is an adjustment. But, this is puzzle pieces that have never fit together before.
And coming up next, we'll chat more about the impact of the Sparks rookies. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Get in on the playoff action and win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks as you and the world's best players take the game to a new level during the NBA Finals that start next Thursday. Quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types are what makes Prize Picks the #1 fantasy sports app. Prize Picks also offers weekly promotions and special offers for the biggest moments in sports. My favorite thing about Prize Picks is that it offers injury insurance so that your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. For basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, Prize Picks will have your back and not count that as a loss. Prize Picks is truly so simple to play. I can even make my picks and submit my entry in less than a minute. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. That's right, download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less, it's that easy. Today's episode is brought to you by Apostrophe. I'm getting married this summer and I'm prioritizing my skincare to make sure I'm looking my best for my big day. With summer around the corner, it's a great time to get started with Apostrophe. Apostrophe is an online platform that connects you with an expert dermatology team to get you a customized acne treatment. Just fill out an online consultation about your skin goals and medical history, take a few selfies, and a dermatology provider will create a customized treatment plan for you. Apostrophe offers access to prescription treatments, both oral and topical medications, for all types of acne. And I love that there's no in-person appointment or trip to the pharmacy needed. We have a special deal for our audience. Get your first visit for only $5 at apostrophe.com/lockedon when you use our code LOCKEDON. That's a savings of $15. This code is only available to our listeners. To get started, just go to apostrophe.com/lockedon and click Get Started. Then use our code LOCKEDON at sign up and you'll get your first visit for only $5. Thank you, Apostrophe, for sponsoring this episode. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. So, Cameron, after the draft this year, you wrote about the Sparks rookies. How have they made an impact so far this season?
Yeah, I think I said before, but I think they're the only team starting 2 rookies. I know we've got some older rookies across the league, so apologies if I'm missing one of them in that, or if there's been a few overlaps. But I think they're just both incredibly versatile and long. It's clear that was kind of a priority for the Sparks in the offseason. These are 2 players that can play both inside and out. And Rickea has been touted repeatedly already by Coach Miller for her ability to play the 3 and the 4, really spread the floor and be a difficult matchup for teams, especially at the 3 guard. So I think with Leja out, thinking a little bit about the rotation and how big the Sparks can be. I mean, I think, Rickea is having to play the 3 a little bit more just because of how that has affected kind of the depth at the guard spot. But I think they're making a huge impact. I mean, I think you saw in Rickea Jackson's just instant offense. Like last night, she came in the 4th quarter and had a little run of her own. She just creates so well. She elevates so well, and she just seems really hard to guard. And then I think for Cam, it's just a question of being able to stay on the floor. She's, leading the league in blocks right now and just causing chaos in the paint as always. So I'm happy to see her doing that.
And how do you expect the rookies to continue to grow and develop and contribute this season?
Yeah, I think it's all about chemistry for the Sparks right now. So I think it's just them getting used to where to be and who else is going to be where. I think that it's already been really clear that Cam and Dearica have kind of this insane on-court chemistry. There have been a few highlight reel passes between the 2 of them already, beautiful high-low basketball. Coach Miller has talked a lot about Cam's attitude and how happy he is to have her on the team. I think that he also has mentioned a bunch of times that he really wants her to get more in the habit of hunting for her own offense and, being a little more selfish than she's used to being. I think Cam played in college last year with Kiki Iriafen and is used to playing with another great scorer in the post. So I think that's boding really well for her and Dearica. And I think for her, it's always been foul trouble's always been a problem. I think as teams get more used to her, or not used to her, but get used to preparing for her, he's noted that he's already seeing coaches scheming to get her out of the paint, put her in vulnerable positions, try to draw fouls, but also just get her away from the basket where she alters, like, every shot that comes in there. So I think it's just going to be a little bit of, like, I think as Coach Miller calls it, a chess match, figuring out where to put her on defense, where she can still continue to do what she does best, and also, get more minutes from her by keeping her out of foul trouble.
Yeah. And if you haven't checked out Cameron's story on Cameron Brink, or as our editor-in-chief calls it, Cameron on Cameron, I loved the story, but what really stood out to me was the quote that was in the deck. Kurt Miller said she has no idea how talented she could be. Where do you think Cameron Brink's potential and room for growth is, as she continues to develop and get used to the WNBA? It's only been 7 games so far.
Yeah. I think the answer is, like, I don't really think she has a ceiling right now. I've been a Cam Brink fan for a long time, but I think that she had a few really great games against Indiana and Dallas. I think then she came back the next game and had only 3 points. So I think it's really just focusing on offense for her. I mean, I think on defense, she's doing what she needs to do. Again, she alters. I mean, it doesn't show up in the stats sheet, but she alters every shot that comes in there. She makes it so hard for the other team. But I think it's really about hunting for her offense, getting a little more selfish, like he said. But she's shooting outside right now. She's continuing to be well-rounded. I think she mentioned recently she wants to really work on her handle. I think she's seeing the value that Dearica can have by being able to bring the ball up the court, because they're so they're so quick at the post position right now that's just going to add another element to her game, being able to take people off the dribble a little bit. But just her versatility makes her such a good fit for the W. And I don't really see a ceiling for her right now. It's hard for me to imagine that she's not going to continue to grow. I think the Sparks have been really vocal about the fact that they're really excited for her to be there. And she's got Camille Little in a great post defender as an assistant coach for the Sparks. I think they're committed to her growth. They're committed to her being there. And I think that kind of general attitude is going to make it really hard for her to not be great.
And building off of that, you mentioned this in your story as well about Camille Little, but what makes LA a great place for Cameron Brink to develop and grow in the WNBA?
I think LA, at least, I've been here a couple years, and I'm from California. This is my team by proximity for a long time. But I think that the Sparks have really been looking for somebody to kind of get behind, and we need, at least the Sparks fans, I mean. So I think the Sparks fans, attendance isn't always what they want, I think. And I think the personality that Cam Brink brings is so valuable. She's so vocal. She's so energetic. I think LA is a town that loves a superstar. So can't hurt to have that kind of hype personality on the bench and on the court. I think Dearica Hamby has spoken about Cam a few times, and Cam has spoken about Dearica, and it sounds like what's happening is just a really cool 1-2 punch of vet rookie post play, both on and off the court. I think their chemistry is really fun to watch. And it sounds like they're just really rooting for each other. And so I think the combination of a staff that's excited you're there, a assistant coach that's dedicated to elevating your post defense, a fan base that's already in love with you, and a post player who, is also dedicated to your growth is pretty awesome.
Yeah, all of that sounds great. Excited to see, how you continue to cover her this season, and how Rickea Jackson does as well. Coming up next, we'll chat more about who has impressed Cameron so far this season, what she's looking forward to, and more. So one thing I know that you mentioned offline was the crowd on, I believe, May 24th when the Sparks played the Fever. Can you talk more about what that environment was like?
Yeah, crazy. It was really cool. There were 19,000 people in crypto. I've never really seen anything like that for a women's sporting event. I think, it's funny to see the number of Caitlin Iowa 22 t-shirts in the crowd, but fortunately they're black and yellow, so the 22 can be Cam Brink from afar. I think, like I said, the Sparks haven't had the highest attendance in the last few years. It's been a challenge. LA generally a challenge to get people to sporting events on weekdays at 6. But I think that it was just really fun to watch. I think the level of excitement in the building was amazing. And it was people who were just there to watch basketball, which I think is really fun. Obviously, a lot of people brought to the court or brought to the gym that day for Caitlin. But I think that what ended up happening was a lot of cheers for every good play. And I think that's what's been a little bit lacking maybe in LA is getting people out to games who just want to watch good basketball. And I'm really hopeful that we've got some of those people coming back. There was another good crowd at Dallas a few days later. It wasn't, we weren't selling out the top, the 300 level, but I think there are about 10,000 people there against Dallas, which, on a long weekend again in LA is not bad. I think that what I'm hoping is that this fan base continues to see what's happening here and is able to latch on, whether or not, they become a lifelong Sparks fan, but just really understand the level at which these women are playing basketball. And, Cam Brink herself getting a lot of individual cheers that game too. So I think it's true. I mean, the juju effect is real. Like people in LA love a superstar. And I think I'm just really hopeful after that.
Awesome. Well, I can't wait to hear you hopefully back on Locked On, talking about how that energy has continued throughout the season. Need to get people excited about basketball in LA before the Olympics come in a few years.
Yeah.
So who has impressed you the most this season?
Team wise, I think the Connecticut Sun just look so good. Speaking of chemistry, like they just look so polished. They've always had such amazing star power. And I think, Alyssa Thomas is just like one of my favorite players to watch always. But I think I'm also just really impressed by teams like Chicago, who I think have had, we thought maybe it was going to be a little bit of a rebuilding year, kind of some new pieces coming together, new coach. But I think they're scrappy. And I think Coach Weatherspoon is such a good defensive coach. We saw it on display last night. Like there was a period of time where I felt like the ball was just ending up in their hands over and over again. But I think it's, I think there's so much more parity in the league than there has been. Obviously, we've got a few teams that are without a win or, kind of near the bottom of the pack right now. But like when you consider the fact that one of the most exciting players in the game is on a team that's, I think, 1-8 right now, like there's just you get so much fun every night. And so I think in terms of impressing me, I'd probably say the Sun, but in terms of impressing me overall, I'd say, the level of basketball that's getting played across the league.
Yes, definitely. And it's been so much fun to watch, especially, with that condensed schedule, there's more than one great game on every night.
Exactly.
Has anyone stood out individually on the Sparks?
Yeah, I think Rickea Jackson, I think I really like what she's able to do coming in. I think Coach Miller called her the 6th starter at one point, and now she's in the starting rotation. So that's been fun. Ari McDonald came in the last couple of games in the absence of Leja and has just looked like instant kind of energy for them. I've watched her play a lot because of the Pac-12, but I think that she's just somebody who will like just really surprise you. Her quickness is out of control. Like I forgot how fast she was until we saw her play in person, the other day. And she had one play where I just kind of gasped. I mean, she's one of the quickest players in the league. And so I think, she plays a really different role than Leja does. But I think that, having her as kind of an alternate at the point guard spot will be fun. But Rickea Hamby, I can't say enough about. She's playing all-star caliber basketball right now. She came off the court the other day and had played, I think, all but 19 seconds and said she could keep going. I mean, she's just got this motor that's insane. And I think she's just playing all-star basketball.
And then for Sparks fans or people that want to check out the Sparks now that they've listened to the podcast, what games do you have circled on your calendar that they should check out?
I mean, all of them. I think it's always fun when the Aces come to town. They're here next Sunday, the 9th. And I think, that's a good one just because I think we're going to get a repeat of some of the energy we had in the Fever game. And it's always fun when that happens. But I think, when I used to play that, the coach always tells you that the next game you're supposed to be excited about is the next one on the schedule. So I think that the answer, I don't want to make any of my old coaches mad. So I'll go with that, I guess.
I mean, that's how I feel, games end and I'm already looking forward to when I'm watching the next day. Is there anything else you're looking forward to in the next few weeks of the season, heading into the Olympic break? And I think only about 6 weeks.
Yeah, I think nothing in particular, I guess. I think it's just like you said, we're getting multiple good games every day, and we're able to watch them, which is pretty great. Getting to have more basketball at our fingertips, via different streamers and channels is pretty awesome this year. But I think it's just like this condensed schedule. I know it's really hard for the players and the teams and all the people that support them day to day. But I think for us, it is an opportunity to build some momentum for fans and people that love the game kind of going into the break and, see kind of how teams are able to develop during that time as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining me today, Cameron. Where can the listeners find you online?
My Twitter account is Cam14Ruby, and I'm writing at The Next a lot right now, so you can check me out there as well.
Yeah, make sure to check her out. And thanks for making Locked On Women's Basketball your first listen every day. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV Channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available on the free Fire TV Channels app. And make sure to tune in tomorrow to hear from our WNBA draft crew.
Thanks, Natalie.